On this episode of David's Garage, singer-songwriter Kim Kelley.
Tease me with your words, the drip as you describe, the everythings I've wanted, from the moment you stepped up to let me take a look into your blue, into your blue. Come with me to my quiet place, away from this tide, where it's calm, bright and clear, and we can leave it all behind. Lean into me so I can feel the fears you want to share that cover you sometimes, when the night is black and bare, black and bare. Step up and let me take a look as you hold me with your eyes and tease me with your words, the drip as you describe, the everythings I've wanted, from the moment you stepped up to let me take a look into your blue, into your blue.
So you grew up in Texas?
Yes, I did.
What part of Texas?
Dallas, Texas.
You were born in Dallas, raised there?
Yeah.
How many years did you spend in Dallas?
I spent the first 6 years of my life, and then we moved to Nashville because my mom was a professional songwriter, and so we went to for her to write for ASCAP.
Oh, really?
And so she was part of that early Nashville scene, country scene. So I spent a few years living there and then back to Texas. So
how old were you when you went back to Dallas?
I want to say maybe 9.
9?
Yeah.
So were your formative years, the teen years in Dallas, or the area?
Yeah. Oh yeah, big city. That's why I live in Bend now.
So with your mom being a professional songwriter, she toured too, I understand.
Yeah, she had a band. Yeah.
And did you do some of that with her?
You know, not when I was really young, but I think some of my earliest memories when she was touring was just of all, practices at our home, and just lots of camaraderie and
sleazy musicians around
and music and really bad jokes and the usual. Kind of like hanging out with you.
Excellent. So how old were you when you started singing on your own?
Well, of course, choir. Growing up, always loved music. So, and we always just had music in the house. So we always just sang together. But probably just choir as far as formal teaching, choir. And then, of course, if I would be singing around the house and someone else would sing, then you'd try to sing harmonies with him, so it was always
Sure.
kind of on the fly, you know, just
Right.
to see how many part harmonies you could get going. But no, kind of just always. But I think officially is when I picked up an instrument and said I want to do this more for just, you know, the fun of it and more for an expression
Of yourself.
was probably of myself, you
Right.
know, writing my own things. Probably my late 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
So even with your mom's influence and as young as you were when that was going on,
Yeah.
it took you a little while to come to it on your own?
Well, yes, but I think there was a lot of
Mother-daughter stuff?
well, no, it was more of warnings as far as my mom really
Oh.
knew the industry, and so she really encouraged me to get a real profession and be stable and on my own. And I think once I felt like I did that, then I had that freedom to say, okay, now I'm stable, I'm on my own, and now it's time to do the fun stuff.
Right.
And because I think she really tried to make a career of it, and it was a career, and I think she just saw how hard and competitive it was, and so she didn't want that to be the only thing. It'd be like if I want to be a pro football player. She'd say, great, but get an education.
Sure.
You know, so I think that was part of that. But in my late 30s, I felt like, you know what, I am where I want to be professionally, and now it's time to.
So you've just been
Have
playing
fun.
about 6 months then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a little less.
So how much, okay, with going so late to the music, even
Yeah.
though your mom's influence was there, how much did her music and her style and who she has influenced your music?
Great question. Because when I first started writing, I was taking her songs and tweaking them, and because I don't really like country, you know, straight country, and so I would change the melodies of her songs because they were in perfect form. So as I would change them, I wouldn't change the form of the song. So I really always learned that they needed to be in a certain way because she wrote, you know, for a song to be sung by someone else, so it had to be
Right. There's a formula to
yeah,
it,
it
structure.
had to be in the right structure, and so I really learned that by dissecting her songs and trying to see how I could tweak them. And she would tell me yes or no based on the form and keeping the songs pure as we could. But then there came a day, probably after about a year, and I was performing her songs out with Mean Willie, just with a different melody, and I think she just decided that she wanted me to leave her children alone and create my own. And she basically said, it's time for you to write your own stuff. You know how to do it, now just do it.
So she came and took her songs back.
Yeah, you know, and she to this day, she gives me free rein.
Sure.
She just wants them sung, you know, so.
Well, and she's also now seen that you've got a stable of stuff of your own.
Exactly.
And you've accomplished what she was hoping you'd be able to without, you know, leaning too much on her tunes.
Exactly.
So now you can play them
Exactly.
again.
So she did a good job.
All right, so now I got to tease you a little bit.
Yeah.
Bee Gees?
Bee Gees,
You told me in a little bit of, I mean, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We play together a lot and stuff.
Yeah.
But I always send out a little questionnaire to folks I'm going to have in the garage. And
Which was so fun to fill out. It
good,
really was.
Good,
It
because
kinda-
sometimes you think, you know.
There were questions I'd never even thought of. I'm like, I never thought of it.
But when I asked you about influences, you said the Bee Gees, and I have to qualify because I am not an anti-Bee Gees kind of guy. A lot of men are.
I hope
but
not,
I'm
because
not.
I'd hate to cut this
I know,
interview short.
I know, you'd hate to walk out of the garage. But what period of the Bee Gees are we talking? Are we talking Saturday Night Live?
Oh,
or,
yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Saturday Night Fever, Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
is
well, that was the big movie, yeah. No, but I think because they were so awesome and so hip, and the harmonies, because I've always been so into harmonies, and they really, I felt like, you know, there were so many great songs, but the harmonies they did were just so fun to try to, you know, I could sing their songs over and over again and try to do each of the different parts. And
it was interesting for me with the Bee Gees because my parents were into them when I was fairly young, and it was like I started a joke, and you don't know what it's like to love somebody. Really early stuff.
Yeah.
And then when the disco thing came around, I have to admit I kind of jumped on the I don't like the Bee Gees bandwagon because of the disco thing.
Yes, but their early stuff is probably now my favorite.
Yes.
I think when I was listening to them in high school, it was that whole 80s scene. But
when you wanted to be the fourth Bee Gee.
Exactly. I don't know why they didn't call me. But now when I listen to, because I have almost all of their, I probably have all of their music, but really the early stuff, which kind of has a more kind of country feel to it, which I love to listen to because I'm like...
And a very English interpretation of American country at the time, I think.
So which makes me love them even more.
So how old were you when you left Texas?
27.
So really, you hadn't started performing out a lot at that time.
No.
Now, since you've gone back and performed in Texas
Yep.
with your brother, and
Yeah, yeah. I was just in Houston and performed while I was there. But yeah, no, I left to kind of travel the country and see where I wanted to end up, and
Colorado, I heard, was on
Colorado, Massachusetts, and then ended up here because Ben really
Look,
has
another Bee Gees reference. Are you going to Massachusetts?
See, we're linked.
You-
Blue eyes, can't disguise